Welcome to our March ELD Check-In. Today we have a special guest, Julie Antill from the Southeast RPDC. And I'm going to let Julie just jump right in. So go ahead, Julie.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see, here we go. Okay, and so this month we're going to be talking about cross-curricular instruction. And this is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's how I tried to teach when I was in the classroom. And also when I had the migrant summer school in the southeast part of the region, our curriculum also had a real link with STEM, science, math, and ELA. And so I helped direct that a couple of years, and also trained teachers for about 5 years in that curriculum. And so I labeled this "No More Silos," and I actually got that from Valentina Gonzalez, someone that I really enjoy following. And she talks about how silos are for farming and not for education. And I grew up on a farm, so that made sense to me. And when we see silos of education, we see that cross-curricular teaching could help pull those silos together. And this is what the National Council of Teachers of English define cross-curricular teaching as being. So let you take a look at that for just a minute. And we know that the world really isn't divided into different subject matters. So why should education be? And that's what we're going to talk about today, just a little bit. Making that combination between different subjects. And how do you do that? So here's some strategies for team teaching, for strategies for the implementation of cross-curricular. Things like team teaching, which can lead to co-teaching. And team teaching actually is teachers from different departments that are working together and collaborating. Thematic units, where there's one central theme that drives the lesson. PBL, which there's a lot of information out there on the web about PBL. And using technology, such as STEAM kits and things like that, to bring in the science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So I've done a lot of that in my years of education. And of course, shared writing and research, where students are writing in classes that are not ELA. So writing across the curriculum, which makes a lot of sense to me. So the benefits, bringing teachers together to plan and collaborate, building those relationships is really, really important. And how students realize they can use what they already know to learn. And this is where the strengths of making sense are achieved. They can see themselves as achievers because we are blending different areas, some that they're more confident in and some that they're learning new information from. And of course, it really affects our brains and helps our brain grow, as it will help to create long-term memory. And we'll look at that just a little bit. Enhancing problem solving and critical thinking. So it's going to help us raise the rigor in the classroom a bit, and provides our students more time to practice English in different contexts. It is making it more relevant for students. Why do I have to learn this is a question that students ask sometimes. And sometimes if they see it within different media, different different contexts in a different way, then that answers that question. And of course, improving the retention by making deep connections. And that's really, really important. One of the things that we're going to see is that you no longer address just one standard at a time, too. And it targets multiple goals across the subjects in the grade level. And very often that's going to be a time saver because I know a lot of our content teachers struggle to get through all of those content standards in the year. So if we can blend and see how they match together with other content areas, that helps us reach those standards. It also helps in the way to remove the feeling that some students say, I'm not a math person. But if we can put the math into another content area, they may find that math is not so difficult for them. And they are a math person, building that confidence, that perseverance. Hey, so when we're making sense of new information, the brain is depending on the connections that we make. And when the brain connects and integrates into past experiences and background knowledge, then there's a deeper learning that takes place. And we know that learning physically changes your brain. And your brain really doesn't store those isolated facts. They may remember them briefly, but not for the long term unless they're connected to something else. And so cross-curricular learning can bring that together. And when you encounter new information, those sensory areas of your brain, like your vision and like your hearing, they send signals to regions of your brain, like the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. And the hippocampus acts like a binder that links that new information to what you already know. And the process relies on a principle called association. The brain forms stronger, longer lasting memories when new information connects meaningfully to pre existing networks. So, for example, if we're reading about photosynthesis and you've never seen that word photosynthesis before, it'll stick better with you if you already know something about how plants grow. It gives your brain something to attach to, something to learn from. Personal relevance is also really important, and the importance of knowing your students. Because if we can connect the content in the classroom to their background knowledge and their personal relevance, then you bypass that emotional piece and makes that information more likely to be stored in your memory. And so we can help our students move from the rote memorization to an interconnected and lasting memory bank. And a lot of times in my experience of working with teachers in mathematics too, we find that there's a lot of, in the past, have been a lot of rote memorization, and the next year the students just forgotten it. So if we can build upon what we know about the brain and about learning and develop a way to put context, a contextual piece to the learning, then it's easier to remember. Love this quote by Cummins. Instructional possibilities emerge when bilingual students' language one and prior knowledge are acknowledged as an important resource for learning. So this has been around for a while, and it still remains true. So some of the challenges, there's always benefits, there's always challenges. Some of the challenges that you might have, and a lot of people talk about, and not enough planning time. Or it's seen as a multi-week projects. It doesn't have to be that way. Where a person is unsure of the content standards and expectations, or there's no relationship with that content teacher, or gaps in the student's abilities, and an assessment of standards. So those are some of the, it seems like I missed a couple of slides, so I'm going to run back a little bit. I don't know what happened there. Okay, let's go back to, for some reason we did not go backwards. Okay. Oh man. Okay, Julie. Okay, we missed some benefits here. All right. We did talk a little bit about that, about those benefits, and we need to, it gives students time more to practice in those contexts. I thought I forgot that, but we did get to it. I'm sorry. Moving on. Okay, so let's move on after the benefits and try to look carefully on how do we implement this. One of the ways that we do our implementation is make sure that we have a long-term plan. And that to me is really important. Another part of that is establishing those relationships with the teachers. And that's one, this is a link to the blog. There's a link on here for the blog that Valentina talks about, the EL teacher and the mainstream teachers, and how to establish those relationships. I wanted to show you one way that this happened within my own experience. When I was a teacher, I did some cross-curricular learning with the art teacher, and we did it with social studies and math. And she had the students, we were learning about Lewis and Clark, she had the students draw pictures to show their learning throughout the readings that we were doing. So there was some ELA in there as well. And from those pictures, they painted their own pictures on fabric and created a quilt. And it took all of that measurement. It took a lot of different things to do that. But the learning was there, and it was pretty amazing. So I was blessed to work closely with teachers in my career that planned together with me, and we worked together to create new learning for our students. Valentina talks about this in her blog, about the stepping stones to those relationships. And she talks about how important communication is and how it's more than just sharing data or information about the learners that you share in common, and that having face-to-face contact makes a difference usually with most people. But you want to find out a preferred method of contact with the people that you are working with and get to know each other. The second stepping stone that she mentions is being impeccable with your word. So if you're going to meet with a teacher, be there and be on time, be dependable, but be yourself. And of course, never judge them or have them judge you, or evaluate or gossip about what's going on, because that's not going to be a strong relationship. Then, of course, the support. The support's really important. So you can supply the language support as they supply the content support to you, and become a part of a team. And when you can, attend PD together or model lessons, do things that can help those students, that relationship to build. But one of the things that she said that I thought was very, very kind was give yourself and your colleague grace. Relationships really do take time and effort, but the benefits are really great from those. So planning together, you can learn from each other, and that's a helpful thing to do. So that's one of the major things you have to do if you're going to do cross-curricular work with content teachers. Make sure that your connections between the subjects make sense when you're making connections. Um, Not something that's just trifle, but something that actually can address a standard, help new learning to take place. And we find that academic language is often similar between some subjects and can have a real positive impact to access the knowledge and achievement when you go to different classes. So things that we could use would be things like the bilingual glossaries and cognates. This is from the New York Statewide Regional Bilingual Education Resource Network, and it's free. And there's a link for that. And I also have some resources linked at the end of this presentation as well, and that will be on there. If you haven't seen this one, it's an interesting resource, and I think it's very, very useful. Cami also has a bilingual or a dictionary, bilingual dictionary. And this one is also one that's from ELL 2.0. And on this, you can see then if you enter the words, it will give the pronunciation. When you click on it, it will offer an image of the word and a definition. And then it will show it written in languages that you're familiar with. And Cammy's does the same thing. And so this is really, really beneficial when you're working with content teachers because you can put the vocabulary in there and then you'll see what cognates might be out there in different languages so that you can help the students to link in and make some understanding of what they're reading and what those essential vocabulary words are. So that's another really wonderful piece of information. One of the things that you have to know when you're working with your content teachers is you really have to know your standards, or have to know where your standards are so that you can find out about what the focus is and what the standard is that you're going to be looking at when you're doing cross-curricular learning. And so here's a link to the Missouri Learning Standards on this side. You can click on it, and it's also at the back. It will send you to those learning standards and the priority standards that they have listed there. And you're going to find out in a little bit too that some of those standards really do have some great connections for us in ELD. And so I want you to look at those in just a minute. But we also have our WIDA standards, which are our language standards, and there's a link there to the 2020 version as well. In our WIDA standards, we have all of those 5 standards that show us that we have those language for language arts, language for mathematics, and language for science, and language for social studies. The 2020 version really is created to help us and to help our content teachers see how language and content can be taught simultaneously. And it's a real help there for us to make those links to cross-curricular as well. We also have our key language uses, and you can see down here on the it's really good for alignment, but also it's found in all content areas. So in every content area, even more than these, you're going to find times where students are asked to narrate, inform, explain, or argue. And using those standards alongside with the Missouri Learning Standards, you're going to see some of these very same concepts in the other standards. They may not say argue, they may say have discourse about, or they may say it may be formed in a different way but mean the same thing. So we're going to see that very often within our standards, and we want to think about how we can show that what we're doing with language development fits right into a content classroom, and look at the resources that are found there to help with that. So we want to find common ground. And on this, the first we're going to look at really quickly some of our Missouri learning standards and what they might look like. The first one that I've got up here is is ELA, and you'll notice at the very top of that on the domain they have develop and apply skills and strategies to comprehend, analyze, and evaluate fiction, poetry, and drama from a variety of cultures and times. Now, I just pulled this one just to give you an idea on how our Missouri learning standards can fit right in with what we do with language development and help our multilingual learners be more of a classroom, part of that classroom as well. If you notice down here, this one standard introduce the origin, myths, and culturally significant characters and events in mythology. There are myths in all different cultures, and so we could, go in and we could find some of those to link with and find those stories, and use any of the other standards right here in any of our language, different languages, different cultures, different places that our students come to us from. The next one is also kind of an ELA one, and on this one talks about the discourse in the content. And this is an ELA standard, but there's also discourse or working with peers to have discussions and decision making. In math, we call that math talks sometimes. In science, we have that in science, in argumentation in science, and we also have it in our social studies standards. So in our speaking and listening, we can show that we want our students speaking and we want our students listening. And as an ELD teacher, you have lots of strategies that make that happen. You can start out with things on giving students sentence stems and frames, and also different ways that we can use collaborative groups and cooperative learning strategies, go-to strategies. A lot of those have that discourse in it. So we can share a lot of that with our content teachers. This is actually a social studies from Missouri Learning Standards, and this was a K-5. And down here, it was use a geographical lens to describe the impact of migration on the immigrants in the United States from 1800s to 2000. So, interestingly enough, we've got some of that in our standards, and we can have our students take a look at some of that and help each other. This is also social studies standard, and this is knowledge and relationships of the individual and groups to institutions and cultural traditions. And on this one, you're going to see there are a lot of things about traditions in your community, family, cultural and traditional, family lore, stories about locations and people and cultural events in your community, and then cultural impacts. So very, very interesting that our social studies also has a lot that we could link into to help us through cross-curricular. The next one is also has to do with some of the preservation of cultural life and traditions and commemorations. So lots of cultural heritage inside social studies, Missouri Learning Standards. We're going to find out too that even in those social studies, we've got some of the strategies that we always use with our English learners, which are visuals, drawing conclusions by showing it in visual form, things like that, creating products. This is a part of that social studies. So there's visuals all through the standards. We see a lot of those in the 8 mathematical math practices, where we use manipulatives and visuals to help our students to understand. The 8 math practices, of those, the first one is making sense. And underneath that, it talks about prior knowledge. And the second one is real world connections and multiple representation with visuals. The third one has to do with critical thinking and using the reasoning, your reasoning and the reasoning of others. The fourth one has to do with modeling. The fifth one has to do with using tools and doing real world things using manipulatives and models. And the sixth one is about communicating. So we can see that our Missouri Learning Standards have things in common with the strategies that we use with our English learners. Math talks, math discourse, conceptual understanding, trying to make sense first before you start with procedures, multiple representations using visuals, verbal, and physical tools to make abstract concepts tangible. So a lot of that has to do with that. So math also has a lot to do with how we use strategies with the English learners. Now, this is the next generation science standards. And if you didn't know it, our Missouri Learning Standards in science come from the next generation science standards. And so, but the next generation science standards spell it out here at the bottom. And that's why I pulled this slide up rather than our Missouri Learning Standard in science, because this gives the connections to other standards that even though it does say Common Core state standards, a lot of these standards are just general standards in mathematics and ELA. So throughout this was just a kindergarten example, but all the way up through high school, there is underneath the standard connections down here. So you're going to see that they're going to show us how can we link this to another curriculum? How can we link this learning to the other standards that are in that content area? So using those next gen science standards is one way that we can talk to our science teachers and say, I see that this could be a link. We could work on this together and make more sense for our students. Okay, so the effective cross-curricular strategies for ELLs. These are some that are listed out there. So that's scaffolding the instruction. I'm preaching to the choir with all of these. The graphic organizers, word banks, sentence stems and frames across all subjects to organize thoughts and express ideas. All the visuals and multimedia that you have out there as a resource. So these things can provide that context and clarity of the content for our learners. The collaborative learning, hearing from other students and working on our speaking and listening is, is really, they learn so much from each other, and we learn where the misunderstandings are, or and can correct some of those as we're having students work together, play games together, do projects together, and discuss the content. Vocabulary development, of course, building that language, and we looked kind of at those dictionaries earlier. Inquiry-based learning is another one, using math manipulatives or investigations. And there are other investigations that are not just science, do investigations in other contents and many other content in math and art and different ways that we can do that. Adaptive materials, of course, graphic novels, clarifying concepts through graphic novels. I attended a WIDA presentation at the national conference that was all about using graphic novels in your secondary classroom, and it was really, really excellent. And that language and content integration, which is something that we're trying to work on very often with our content teachers. And of course, by linking the vocabulary and concepts across the different subjects, students build a deeper understanding and recognize language patterns across those contexts. So it often provides more opportunities for the students to practice their English in a content classroom, different content classrooms, and they have more opportunities to hear it in different contexts if we're using cross-cultural standards and working together. Helps the students make connections between those subjects and see how the different subjects are interconnected, and helps them understand the world around them a little more deeply and appreciate the learning about it. It makes learning more relevant and engaging for students, and and it allows teachers to integrate their interests. If we know what our students' interests are, we can try to link into that and put it into another context to help them learn that have the new learning linked to their interest. So I have several resources that are linked with this. This was one is the thematic unit planning, a how-to guide. And it actually has, once you go into this link, it has a unit planning resource that's free that you can download. It's step-by-step unit planning. It has a plan template. Also has vocabulary activities. It has several different things that are very interesting in this. Let's see if we can get there. There we go. Landmark outreach. So down here talks about the benefits of unit planning, how you choose a theme, when you choose a theme, what you should ask, how are my themes relevant to my students' lives and perspectives? Does the theme lend itself to the essential questions that challenge my students intellectually while remaining of high interest? How can I connect to the new information and prior knowledge while taking into account our students' individual cultural schemas? And how can I incorporate technology and multimedia? So really good little website to go to. And here's the strategies that you can download and use in that. So that link is in here as well. This was a website on Edutopia. And so on it, it was an example of setting up a new unit of cross-curricular materials with students in a middle school area. So I thought, somebody may wonder, what does this actually look like? Where can I go? What can I find? There are lots of different examples out there. I just pulled a middle school one. But I liked what it said here, where it said it may seem logical to teach vocabulary of content first. However, vocabulary without context is just words. I found that context and relatability allows for application, analysis, and evaluation rather than simple memorization. And we see that in mathematics as well. This one, it was a social studies unit that they set up with some other cross-curricular things in it. But we find that even in our word problems, if we can find context and relatability, and so we can link that to ELA, if they're reading something in ELA, to have that relatability to the word problems. That's one of the things that we used in Migrant Summer School in that curriculum very often. We had our word problems went along with the book that was linked to our ELA lessons. And also, there was always a STEAM activity that went along with it as well. And we saw that our students, it was not like jumping from one silo to another, but making that interconnectedness and finding where they had some understanding to learn the new learning and work on maybe the math they weren't as strong in. So the link to the context helped them to try to understand the problems that were given to them in mathematics, those word problems. This is actually from Kids Discover Online, and it has this feature called Discovery Maps, and it helps students to see, or teachers, connections between content topics. And so every time you click on one of these topics, it generates a web of related topics. So I think I've got a link here. Let me check it and see. And I found this through the benefits of cross-curricular learning. And this was just a link where he talks about
This is in this video, I'll show you a brief overview of one of the best features Kids Discover online. You can find us at online.kidsdiscover.com. Your students can sign in for free by using a Google account or a Flutter account. Click on Discover in the top menu, and you'll see all the categories up here. And let's say we want to push up on category, let's pick American history. And let's say I want to choose 13 columns. Well, we're seeing how these topics are all connected here. Now, if I click on this view button, I can see this a linear view. I go back. I can continue to click through, click on everything with X. And any of these items you see in yellow will take me right to narrative. And you see it here, I can choose a lesson element and have a article there for it. Let's say and read through the article. This is designed for upper elementary school and middle school. Next Tuesday, I'll be offering a free webinar to go into much more detail on cases.
Okay, so you can see that. Yep, there we go. There we go. So just another resource. I can see this happening in the planning part of a lesson that we want to focus on, and finding the different connections that I might see in another area. So some of these, I know that you can sign up for free to do this. There are a lot of other resources on this that I think are paid for and things such as that. But this one's a really good resource to help us to select a category and try to find a way that we can make connections that are going to make sense and also address the standards that we need to be teaching. There's a lot of information out there about project-based learning, PBL, and this was one of the links that that showed what PBL might look like. And there is out there, there's just unlimited resources. I've got these in the links back there that you can see them from different ranges. PBL oftentimes is an approach where there is a real world problem and challenges, and we use those to try to connect to knowledge and connect them together. And oftentimes PBL does take a little bit more planning because you've got that focus unit. And so that's one thing that it does take time sometimes, but it does not have to be that way. You take pieces of that PBL and you can do shorter learning lessons that will contribute to a couple of different content areas. And so that by looking at some of these types of lessons that are online, you can probably pull some of it out of there to see how I can make something that's not going to last too long in my classroom and take too much time. As that's one of the downfalls that I hear from people who are doing PBL. PBL is an excellent resource and it is a wonderful way to teach. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. This is a resource from Google Earth that is it's called it's part of the Google Earth education, and I called it Where in the World Is. But if you'll look down here, just amazing classroom journeys and activities. We can see lots of things that could help us in the classroom to figure out how do you become an explorer, and on that, what kind of math do you have to have? What kind of sports? Google students will use Google Earth and geometry to explore how far baseball players need to hit a ball to hit a home run and right out of the stadium. So things we might not have thought about at the moment about how math and PE have anything in common, and they have lots in common. So we're going to see lots of links here that can help us, and lots of multimedia that helps our students to see the visuals and understanding of what's going on. So I would encourage you to take a look at this link. It's very, very interesting. So and this one here, explore the Earth's terrain in 3D. So if we're looking in mathematics about what 3D means, this to see the actual Earth in 3D might help that understanding of what we're talking about as well. And lots of different information here that can link to science, math, social studies, and ELA. Wonderful resource. So our multilingual learners have so many experiences that we probably have never even imagined, and have lived in interesting places and have problems solved, some in even their young lives. They have lots to share with us. And if they were in school in another country, have lots of things to share in the classroom. They have history from the culture that that they've come from, geography from where they lived, and connections to real life that we need to understand our students and build their confidence enough where they can share with us those wonderful experiences and connections, to help us to learn more about their culture and them about ours. This is a wonderful website. This is Emily Morgan, and she calls it Share the Wonder. She has some amazing books, but one I want to share with you right now is the next time you see a sunset, which is being read on the International Space Station. And while it's being read, you see the astronauts floating around in zero gravity. And they're reading the story from her book and showing the book. And so that's a wonderful resource to show. Her books are beautiful. I'll just play just a little bit.
Education Foundation. To learn how you can support this exciting project, please visit storytimewithspace.com.
So the cool part is that when you go to Storytime from Space, there are other books that are being read as well by the astronauts. And at the same time, there are things happening in the background that the students can have a lot of questions about what are they doing back there, and what is this or what is that on the International Space Station. So that's a wonderful opportunity. She also has some pretty incredible resources here for the books that she has written. One of those that I really like is that, and this goes along with ELA, it also goes along with science, because it helps students to learn how to write a nonfiction book. And it's the next time you see mentor text study. And so she has videos and how to write your own next time book, teacher's guide on here. It's all free. And her books are just amazing. But you can see a picture here where as a classroom has written their next time book. And there are lots of different next time books. Next time you see a snowflake, a bee, and you've got YouTubes on those too, a seashell, a sunset, a firefly, a pill bug, a moon, a maple seed, a cloud, a spider web. And she also wrote Never Stop Wondering. So wonderful books, a great website that you can help create cross-curricular lessons with her books. I put this up because there's one place in the United States, the only place that has a highway where the highway signs are in metric. And so when we're trying to help our students to find something that they might question, they might learn from, I thought this was kind of interesting. There's an article that goes along with this that's linked to it about how some people are trying to change that. This has been this way for quite a long time, I think the 70s. And the metric signs have been up there for quite a long time. But now this is in Arizona, outside of Tucson. So it's 21 kilometers to Tucson from here. And so by looking at metric system, you're looking at your math. By looking at geography, you're looking at the area that this highway runs, and by looking at the comments, there's some social studies along in there about how there are some people that want to change it back to miles, even though it's just 19 kilometers long, and it's the shortest interstate in the country. And I've liked what this person said, that he's one of the residents, and he said there are not many places in the U.S. you get a little math problem while you're driving. So how people can respond to what legislators are trying to do is a social study issue as well. So there are a lot of cross-curricular things in there. And For our adult learners, it's kind of fun to look up the Saturday Night Live. There is a skit about metrics on there, and it's George Washington and the metrics, and how he talks about we've got a new country, and we're going to measure things in inches and miles, and only things like soda are going to be in metrics, and and things like that. So it's a pretty funny skit. So if you have a chance, look at the Saturday Night Live George Washington skits about the new countries and the new laws. This is one of my favorites. This is Teach Rock, and Teach Rock is a has a curriculum. Actually, it's a nonprofit, and it was launched by Stevie Van Zandt, who was with Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band, and so he provides standard aligns art integrated curriculum for K-12 educators to try to engage students and reduce dropout rates using popular music and culture as a hook to teach your core subjects. So kind of interesting, and it's really neat that, let me go to the next one. I think I've got it on there. Okay, so those free resources, lots of free lesson plans, multimedia resources, targeted subjects like Great Migration, teaching ratios, and and examining technology through the Grateful Dead sound system. So a lot of fun. A lot of culturally responsive materials. I think they've just developed a new part of it that has a lot that has to do with hip hop right now, and it's got free professional development. It's pretty cool little website. Let me go back here and just see. Take you to it for just a second. Inspiring students through the power of music. Here we go. There's the curriculum and multiple subjects, research backed, founded by artists. The American history of rock and soul, harmony, people's playlists, all kinds of things. Up here, here's some of the artists that are on there. Sheryl Crow, all kinds of people that are on there. And on the Artist Council is Van Zandt, Bono, Jackson Brown, Martin Sorensen, and Bruce Springsteen are some of those that are on the board. So it's kind of interesting how they've used music to get our students excited, but also an integrated curriculum that has that element to help our students learn the standards. Got a couple of more I want to show to you. This one is Art Vibes. This is from the National Gallery of Art. And it's kind of interesting. Oops, hang on. It's kind of interesting here that Art Vibes goes to, you can explore these AI powered curated boards of artwork by learning about adjectives, nouns, and verbs. So you can put in an adjective that you like and a noun. Okay. And a verb. And you can generate a board down below. And when you generate that board, then you get some results that are actual pieces of art that could be described with what you put up here. So EL focus with the art. It's kind of fun, free activity that we can take a look. And this one is a K-8 curriculum. And to buy the curriculum, I think it's got some free things on this website, but I think some of it's for purchase. It's STEM sports, it's hands-on learning, real-world examples, and related jobs that are within the following sports up here. And so the one I clicked on to take a look at was actually the golf. And this was grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. You can request a sample lesson there. Here. But on this, it also, if you've got a lot of money, you can get the STEM golf kit and get all the golf clubs and all of that too. But there are some free things that you can get to it. So notice that they've got measurements in there, force of the golf swing, scoring, engineering, a push cart, what's a golf ball, angles, water in golf, climate and weather in golf. So pretty interesting how they link different things like science and math into the game of golf. And so once again, finding out a way that we can work with possibly our physical education teachers, our art teachers, our music teachers, to help our students get through the standards that they need to understand them more deeply with content and activities that connect kids to the real world. So the benefits really outweigh those challenges. When we mix and blend academic subjects together, then our students can combine something they're passionate about with something that they may not be so passionate about. And maybe in linking it this way, they're more open to learning the part that they're not so interested in because we've done it in a way that makes sense to them and has made connections to their prior knowledge. The understanding is deeper, and it's a win-win situation there. So here are some of those links that I used to put this presentation together. And you can go a little bit if you're interested in going deeper and finding out what that's like. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Julie. I found a lot of good links that I'm going to have to go check out now. Some fun stuff to look at. It was very informative. Does anyone have any questions for Julie before we call it a day? All right. We will hopefully see you again next month. I think our next one is special education, if I remember correctly. And Rhonda Hittenberger Ortiz is going to host that one for us. So hopefully we will see you next month. Thank you again, Julie. Looks like everyone's appreciating your resources.